Okie doke. Now, what we're going to make today are Cornish pasties. We're going to start with the dough. My father's family were Salvationists and big mucky mucks in the Salvation Army, and traveled all about the place. And Granny, who was Welsh, at some point was living in a mining community, which is where she learned to make Cornish pasties. And this is her recipe, come down through Dad. And we're going to make large batch. So we're starting with 2 pounds of flour, 6 ounces of margarine, and 4 ounces of lard. To make the pastry a little more fluffy, you could use more lard. The first thing we do is to cut the butter and margarine. So the 6 ounces of margarine should be a stick and a half. What we're going to do is we're going to break it up into little bits into the flour. This is Granny's bowl, by the way. I have no idea how old it is. It's at least older than 50 years. And I don't think there's anyone left alive to ask how old it really is. But she came to the US in 1920, I guess. And first through Canada. Oh, Canada, eh? Dad used to say that she had an accent somewhere between Wales, Liverpool, and Ireland in his autobiography. He describes a delightful exchange between my grandmother and Tallulah Bankhead, which is not suitable for most audiences, as many of Tallulah Bankhead's conversations could be characterized. The trick with making a good dough is everything has to stay very cold. So I've chilled the water that we're going to use next, and usually I'd have the air conditioning going because we want to keep this very, very cold. The other trick in keeping pastry dough cold is to not use the center of your hands when mixing it, but just the fingertips, the coldest part of your hands, rather than the palms of your hands, which are the warmest parts of your hands. Especially if, like Jeannie, you've been whacking your husband in the head. That tends to warm up the palms. So again, using just the fingertips, you want to give a good mix around. Just get lots of air into the mix, get it good and light, and we're going to start giving it a good mix. And then we're going to start to add the water. We've got 3/4 of a pint of water. We're going to not use quite that much, probably maybe half a pint. And again, I've been keeping the water in the refrigerator for the past few minutes so that the water is nice and cold. The trick with the Cornish pasty dough is that it shouldn't be as flaky as, say, apple turnover dough, because after all, you're making a food that you're carrying down into the mines with you, and so you want it to be stand up to the abuse of carrying it around, and you don't want it to come apart. Getting it very, very nice, good firm dough.
And how do you know when it's done, or what consistency are you
Well,
looking at?
you're looking for consistency, something like Play-Doh, something that you could mold and roll out.
And so is it best to add the water gradually?
Oh yes, no, because if you add the water all at one go, then you're going to have to start figuring out the balances again. Add a little more flour, a little more lard, a little more butter. It's best to get it all right the first time. And should roll out very, very nicely. Then, after we finish the dough, we're going to put it in the refrigerator for a little while we make the insides of the pasty. Now, any recipe that starts with a frying pan and cooking all the pasty insides and then putting it in the dough, throw that out. Get rid of that right away. That's not the way you make a Cornish pasty. Cornish pasty, first of all, has to be made in Cornwall. Unfortunately, we can't accommodate that. It is part of Cornwall's national heritage and we respect that, fellow Celts. But on the other hand, if you can't make it in Cornwall, at least you could cook all the bits and pieces inside the pasty dough, inside the pastry, and that makes it an authentic pasty. And you'll notice the taste. It makes the gravy right there, and it's quite good. And you see how all that is coming together. The bowl's nice and clean, and all that flour's been just mixed in nicely with the dough. So there we are, ready to go into the refrigerator and set for a while. Okay, now we get to the critical part in all of this, fixing the insides of the pasty. And as I was saying earlier, you don't want to use, exactly Jack, that was our Jack Russell making his comments. He knows exactly what I was going to say, and he was making his disparaging grunt whenever I talk about somebody pre-cooking the insides of a Cornish pasty. That absolutely ruins it. So what we're going to do, I'm going to give Jeannie the proper knife for cutting this. I'm going to use, this is more kind of cutting a roast knife. This one's proper for cutting vegetables. And what you're going to do, Jeannie, is you're going to cut slices that are approximately what the chunks inside the pasty are going to be. And so you start by cutting slices like so. And when you've done a bunch of those, then you're going to cut them into the lateral slices of the right width. And I'm doing this nice and slowly because we're going to not lose any digits for Jeannie here. She needs them all. And you see, we're cubing this. So when that's finished, they're all nice little cubes of potato that are going to cook up nicely in the pasty. Now, I'm going to leave those right there for you to see the size. So again, you're going to start with the long cuts, then the horizontal cuts, and you see I was able to do about 3 at a time, and they came out quite perfect. I'm going to cut the swede. The swede is one of the greatest fruits on earth. It's also called a turnip in this neck of the woods for some reason, but and a rutabaga. It's also called a rutabaga, I believe. Is that a rutabaga, Gene?
Right, it is.
It's a round turnip.
Sort of purpley.
You can eat them raw. They're just lovely. Be very careful cutting the swede because it is a bit, it's a bit resistant, and you do want to watch your fingers. Now the other things that we're putting into this are a chopped onion and cubed meat, and we want to use a nice quality beef because, again, those who use ground beef or things like that should not call what they make Cornish pasty, because it's not. Cornish pasty is often made with skirt steak, and so it should have enough of a marbling in it to make a good sauce, because that's where your gravy really comes from. This is medieval cooking. The pasty begins, the first reference is around the time of Henry VIII. And so back then, you're not, you don't have your curry sauces or your HP sauces. You're making your gravies with just the mix of the good food you're putting in. And again, this is workman's food. These, in Cornwall, they taken down in the tin mines, and so you had to have a self-contained meal. Now we're going to do something that my grandmother used to tell me about, and I'm not sure if it comes from Wales or from Cornwall. She says the miners in one of the places that she lived, their wives would put apple at one end of the pasty, and you'd have a sharp end and a flat end, and you'd start eating at the flat end, and that's how, on the flat end, you knew that was your dinner, and you'd eat your way to the apple. The apple end was your dessert, but it also, the apple helped to make a bit of a slight apple essence in the gravy. It was really quite special. How are you going there, Jean?
Good. Did you want to use the smaller knife?
By the way, for anyone who's wondering, this is Jeannie, who is my long-suffering better three-quarters. The girl I taught to make limpet stew when we were studying foods eaten during the famine to survive the period of genocide in Irish history. On the side of the road in West Kerry. She was also the girl who found an Inishmaan curragh in Bloomingdale's. That was a story for another day. It took up the next 11 years of my life, which is a good thing. I went on to build Irish curraghs after spending years and years studying them and trying to acquire not only a boat, but a very specific process. Jeannie came home from being out one day. She says, "There's a curragh at Bloomingdale's." Like most husbands, I said, "Yes, dear," and patted her on the head. She said, No, there really is a curragh at Bloomingdale's." And I said, "Oh, there's a nice big black boat at Gert." And she said, "No," she said, "will you stop being a Pratt?" And I went to Pratt Institute for a year and a half, so I'm very good at being a Pratt, I suppose, at times. And she told me, "No, there's a real curragh at Bloomingdale's." I went, and there was. And we got it donated to the National Maritime Historical Society, along with two others, which is a wonderful organization I used to work for, under the direction of the remarkable Peter Stanford, who one could do an entire show just on stories of Peter. Okay, now comes the fun part. We're going to build a Cornish pasty. We start by flouring down the board, or in this case the wax paper, and then flouring down our ham. I'm going to take a nice, almost baseball-sized piece of dough here and press down onto the flour. I'm going to roll it out. Now, as they say in math classes, we describe a circle with a plate and a knife. How would you describe a circle, Jeannie? Big round yolk. No sharp edges. And look at that, we have one circle. I'm going to put this up on the edge of our rolling pin. We're going to start with a bit of swede. Put that in there. Lovely bit of swede. And a bit of potato if you're in Boston. A little bit of lovely meat. Jeannie, if you could get me a piece of paper towel ready for the next stage in this. We're going to get some lovely onions here. Excuse the left hands, my Muslim friends watching me make this. Excuse the beef, my Hindu friends watching me make this. A little bit of parsley. Now, why do we have a little bit of kitchen roll or paper towel at this stage? And we'll show you. So we want to get our salt and pepper all mucked up. A nice bit of pepper. And some lovely sea salt, pinch of sea salt. There we go. Should have gone on the left shoulder. And Now we're going to make room for the apple, which Jeannie has expertly cut up on this side. That's your dessert right there. That's also, in the end, that you throw down the deepest shaft in the mines for the knockers. You could Google that. Well, before we fold this over now, we're going to take a bit of beaten egg, or beaten egg if you prefer, and we're going to paint the seam here with a bit of egg. And then comes the hard bit. I'm going to fold it right over. We're going to pinch it down and crimp it. Now, when you buy a store-bought pasty, you'll see little marks of a fork or whatever little tool they use to make the mock crimping. The proper way to do it, you take your thumb, fold it over your thumb, pinch it. Take your thumb, fold it over your thumb and pinch it. And you're making a spiral all down the side of the pasty. That also is the mark of a real Cornish pasty, is the hand crimped spiral edge. Now, when you make the apple the way Granny used to do, it saves you the unfortunate mess of trying to figure out how to crimp that last bit, because you're going to make the square end so that people know where to begin eating your pasty for the one. Then you put it here on your pan to go in the oven. And then you make the belly button, little vent hole, chimney to let out all the steaming goodness. And then we're going to glaze it with a bit of egg. And it's going to slide all over the place, probably wind up on the floor with the dog. He'll be quite happy. He loves pasties. And there it is, ready for the oven. If I were making a few of them, I'd immediately put that into the refrigerator to stay cool, so that'll stand up to those first few minutes in the oven.